Hi, everyone. I hope you are doing well. I'm going to discuss Chapter 7 today with you of the PDE 4 examination of the PPRA. I'm going to go through the chapter and show you what is important, what to make notes of, and to highlight in your file, and to maybe write some additional notes. I'm going to stop sharing or stop recording me and share my screen with you guys, that you can also have the PDF chapter in front of you, and you can use mine or you can mark yours as we go along. Okay, so I'm going to stop my camera and I'm going to share my screen with you. Let me just get to my screen. I'm going to share my entire screen and I will share it with you. And you should see Chapter 7 of the PDE 4 exam in front of you. Now we have the index over there. I'm going to go down. Now the purpose of this chapter is to critically analyze communication, texts, written communication, etc., etc. Okay, so it's important. You will need this in your everyday to-day functioning as a real estate agent. This is your unit standards and your critical cross-field outcomes. If we go on page 325 to your introduction. Now, being a real estate agent, you have to keep yourself up to date with property trends. You have to be aware of the latest news and developments in the property market, the interest rate, what properties are the buyers favor the most in the current economical conditions, and this is not only for yourself. This is to have conversation with your sellers or your buyers. You keep conversations interesting. If it's part of your image. You know what's happening outside. You're out there and you are aware of the trends and new products, etc., etc. So and you will tell me now, most probably, you don't have time to read the news, but this is what this chapter is all about, to differentiate and see what's important and what's not important. Okay. Now, over here, you have an article trying to sell your home, and it was quite interesting. You can actually use this information in your day-to-day activities as a realtor. Okay. So this is a article about sellers trying to sell their homes privately, etc., etc. Now, with this article, you can read this article in your own time afterwards. They have questions. Now, you're going to get an article in the exams. It's not necessarily the same article. Okay, it can be something else, an article, and then about a 4 or 5 paragraph article related to the property industry, and then they're going to ask you questions. And remember, now our open book exam is time bound, so you have all the answers, but you are seriously constrained by time. Okay, I think it's a 2-hour exam. PDE 5 is a 3-hour exam, so there's no time to spare. You're working against time here. So this is why it's so important that you know where all the information is in the file, that you're going to tab everything in your file, make notes. You're going to have to go through and find the information very fast. Okay. So now they're going to, off this article, they asked you questions. Why do sellers try to sell their properties? Now, if you read this article, you will know why they try to maximize on their profits. It's actually there in paragraph 2. Sellers often think they can increase their profit. Okay. So this is all questions, and I'm not going to review the article with you because you're not going to get the same article in the exam. You're going to get a total different one. But what's important is on page 326, okay? Reading strategies. If you don't have time, and again, I said you can apply this in your day-to-day activities as a realtor. First, you're going to skim the article, okay? By skimming, you're not going to read the whole passage, but you're just going to look at the important things, the title, the first paragraph, okay? Anything that's been emphasized in bold or italics or underlined or in capitals, and then the last paragraph, okay? So and now they say, they actually guide you here, the article. If you skim the article, you will come above, this is now the heading, trying to sell your home. This is your first paragraph. This is in italics, like in if you do double commas there, it's supposed to be in italics. You've got all the important information, and now you have the last paragraph over there. So now you have a basic idea what the article is about, okay? Selling your home privately is risky. You know, so they have the bullet points there, what the article is all about. Now, if you're ready to read the article in the usual way, then you will know what it's all about, more or less, and you will read it easier, okay? Then you're going to read all your questions, okay? Now, I'm going to go back to the questions that they asked, and there you have 5 questions. Now, read all the questions before you're going to answer them. Why? Because you might think, oh, this is the answer. But if you read question 4, it might have a bit of this question 1 and 4, so that you don't waste time answering a question wrong. Okay, so read all the questions, then you know, okay, why are sellers trying to sell? What are the dangers? Okay, some sellers overprice their home. People have very little faith in private sellers. So basically, it's to avoid duplication. Okay, so I'm going to go back, read your questions, all the questions, and then you are ready to answer your questions one at a time. Okay. There's examples for you. Go through that and do the exercise. It's very important. They're not going to ask you again the same content, but they can ask you, they're going to, and this is a given because I know I marked the examination paper. They do give you an article with questions to see how quick you can skim your work. Do you understand what you're reading, etc., etc. Okay, so this is very important, and you have to do the exercise by yourself. Okay. Here's an activity. You can read the daily newspapers. This is like, again, in your day-to-day activities, okay? Whenever you read through a written text, you must be aware of the underlying meaning of the words and the sentences that you read. This is so important in your day-to-day work as a realtor, okay? Now, again, I've got some definitions for you. Irony. It's like if people use humor or they are sarcastic. They use sarcasm to imply the opposite of what they really mean. Okay, there's an example for you. Then they have sarcasm. You can mock someone ironically. This is now sarcasm to convey a message. In Afrikaans, we will say, "Jy gee die ou nou 'n steekie." Okay, there's an example for you. Satire is used satirical when you use irony or sarcasm to actually illustrate the ridiculousness of something. Okay. Hyperbole is if you exaggerate, okay, to create an effect. Okay. writers normally use exaggeration to emphasize something or to make a point, okay? Legislative writing, laws, regulations, and rules are written in a legislative style, which normally it's in point form, okay, not bullets, point form. I always say if you provide your client with any feedback or update, it's very good to do that in point or bullet, but I prefer the point form because you can always refer to section 2, this blah, 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 blah. You know, as I explained in section 4 or paragraph 4, it's good to number your emails in a professional tone if you provide feedback, same as legislative writing. Okay, the structure of legislative writing, they have like a short introduction, an introduction paragraph. Very good to write emails with a short introduction paragraph to just to start off what the email is about. Okay, so that is quite important. Let me just quickly check here. We stay in the call, and I've got to go back to the PDF. Okay, so that's about the structure, and they give you an example, okay, that you can go through. Then you have your titles and your headings. So work through this. This was quite useful on page 334, the list of the Roman numerals from 1 to 20. I can never memorize this. So it's a good to have, you know, if they might ask you a question, you know, what is the number 17 in the Roman numeral? Provide the Roman numeral numbers for the number 19, okay, for the ordinary number 19. So make a note 334. It's important, okay. There's again an activity that you can do, and then we move on to your figurative language. Okay, it's a language they make use of figure of speech. The language is not literal, but rather they use metaphors or symbols or imagination. Okay, similarity is used to do a comparison, okay? And they use words like or as, okay? So this is, again, it's important to know that because I can ask you, is this similes that we're using, similarities? Okay, and there's an example for you. Metaphors, okay? It's a direct comparison. One thing is compared directly with another, and you also use the words like or as, and there's an example for you. Then there's an activity on page 336 that you can do by yourself. This is just to provide you with exercises and prepare you for the exam, okay? Now we're looking at visual literacy on page 338, okay? Visual literacy is concerned with interpretation and finding meaning, okay, in pictures, graphs, and other visual symbols. So they can ask you a question, what is meant by visual literacy? And there you have the answer, okay? So on page 338, you have the answer of the definition, visual literacy. Graphs, we all know what graphs is. And I can remember they do give you a graph and they say, what information can you see on this graph? Okay. Now you're going to get you do get different graphs. Okay. There's a definition of graph. Now you get different graphs. There's a bar graphs. Okay. Here's an example of a bar graph. Okay. So they're gonna you're definitely gonna get an answer. What information can you get in this graph? Okay. Now, first of all, you have your Y and your A axis, your Y axis axis. So first of all, you're going to see this is now a house. You can see how many houses were sold each time, but also how the different months compare to each other. So if I look at this graph, I can see the most houses or the most units were sold in January. Okay, they used 4 months. Okay, January to April. The lowest sales was recorded in February. So January was the highest, followed by April, then March, and last February. So we had a high in January, followed by a serious drop of units sold in February. Then it picked up again in March, and then the second highest was in April. This is what I can see by looking at this bar graph. So rather provide more information on the graph that you see than too little. Try to elaborate a bit more. We have in this bar graph, because they're just going to tell you in this graph, what do you see? What information? Then you're going to say, in this bar graph, that's a mark that you're going to get because you showed them it's a bar graph. Then you have 4 months in the bar graph, and you see how many houses were sold because they will have a little heading there telling you houses sold. Okay, January was the highest month. That's another mark. April was second. March was third, and the lowest was February. What trend can we see? January was the highest, and it had a sharp drop in February. So in this, I can get 5 points by elaboration more and more, and not just providing it's a bar graph. Okay, so if they mark your answer, you will have a lot of 5 marks questions, so 5-point questions, and elaborate more. So rather give more fully detailed information, and you score marks on that. Okay, so now here's by looking at the graph, you can clearly see most houses were sold in January, least houses were sold in February. Sales started off on a high in January before dropping to the lowest figure in February. And then there was a steady increase again from February to March, and then from March to April. I just added April was second most units, third most units, and the lowest. So this is how you provide data from the graphs. Okay, now you can get different graphs. This is a line graph. Okay, because there's not a bar, but you call this a line graph. Okay. There again, they show you what information you can get. So go through this, read this, that you can see what information they give you about the graphs. Okay, there's a pie chart. Okay, that's the circles. Okay, you might get a bar graph, a line graph, or a pie chart, but you need to tell them this. In this pie chart, I can see the following information, and then you provided points, bullets, blah blah blah, all the information, and for each bullet or point, you're going to get a mark. Okay, or half a mark. And the secret of an open book exam is try to be as thorough as possible. Okay, because you're going to increase your marks by doing that. Okay, there you can see they give you an activity, an example of the pie chart on page 341, and then you have your self-assessment questions. Okay, what should you do when skimming a paragraph or an article when you read it? Now your answers is on page 326. Okay, also, this information was on page 326. Is it correct to state when reading an article for the first time, you should always stop and immediately look up those words that you do not understand? No, you don't do that. What they say on page 326 is you have to, sorry, I'm going to go back to page 326. Oh, I'm 336 now. Let's just go back. 326. Sorry about this. Close your eyes until I get to the correct page. Okay, skimming. If you skim, okay, you don't read the whole. Oh, here we go. Okay, this is now skimming. We skim there. Okay. Okay, here on page 328. Okay. You read it. They say when you read the article, you might come across words that you do not understand. Don't panic. Okay. Underline the word, because if you read more information, you might understand the word. I just want to actually highlight this. Okay, so when you, let me just do this because this is important. It can be a question. Sorry, my arms go there. Okay, do not panic. Underline the word. Okay, and carry on reading. You will most probably understand most of the article anyway. Okay, let me just file save this, save. There we go. And I just want to save this. Sorry. Yes. Okay. So you will also have that. I did underline it. It's this is a question they're going to tell you. Should you look up the words if you don't understand it whilst you skimming an article? No, you just underline it. After you read the article, okay, and you don't understand the word, then you can look it up. But while you skim, no, don't look it up. And another tip, this is now not exam related. It was when I was doing my studies, I had the Shakespeare English. It was extremely difficult. I had a little booklet that was indexed, A, B, C, D. And whenever I learned a new English word, I wrote it down in the book. And then, like, if I have time and I want to review the work, the words, I went through my little index books of words. That's all. It's just a tip for you. Anyway, okay. So this exercise for me is very important. Use the techniques that you have learned in this unit standard, the skimming techniques, okay? And read the article below and answer the questions. So do that. That's very good for an exercise to prepare yourself for the examination. I have not done that with you, but you're going to do it and you're going to exercise this. So when you get into the exam, you're going to be prepared and you're going to know what to do. Okay, so I'm going to go out here and I'm going to stop presenting my screen and I'm going to turn my camera on. There we go. So that was chapter 7. I will continue with chapter 8, maybe later this week or early next week. And yeah, we carrying on, we making some progress. Okay. So you must have a lovely day. Remember, any questions, email me or WhatsApp me. I'm here to assist you guys. Okay. Have a lovely day further. And it's winter now in South Africa, so it's cold. You can see I'm sitting here with short sleeves. It's hot and sunny, dry. But stay warm and enjoy your week further. I hope you all have a productive week. And then we chat soon. So have a lovely day further. Ciao.